ஆனால் அதற்கு முற்றிலும் நேர்மாறானதாக மருத்துவர் அலெக்சாண்டர் அம்மையாருடைய உரை அமைந்திருந்ததோடு வன்னி மண்ணில் தமிழ் மக்கள் அனுபவித்து வரும் அவலங்களையும் ஸ்ரீலங்கா அரசாங்கத்தின் திட்டமிட்ட இனப்படுகொலை நடவடிக்கைகளையும் அதற்கு துணை நிற்கும் நாடுகளின் உள்நோக்கங்கள் சர்வதேச ஊடகங்களின் பாராமுகம் குறித்தும் அவர் வெளிப்படையான நேர்மையான கருத்துக்களை பகிர்ந்து கொண்டார். சுனாமி அனர்த்த காலத்தில் வன்னி மண்ணில் சென்று தங்கியிருந்து பாதிக்கப்பட்ட மக்களுக்கு உதவியிருக்கும் மருத்துவர் அலெக்சாண்டர் அம்மையார் அந்த மக்களோடு நேரடியாக பழகியிருப்பவர் என்ற வகையில் தமிழீழ விடுதலை போராட்டம் குறித்த ஆழமான புரிந்துணர்வை கொண்டவராகவும் இருக்கிறார்.
Dr. Alexander is an American physician who is committed to helping people in distressed communities. She was the recipient of the Bruno Lima Award of the American Psychiatric Association in 2007. This award was for Dr. Chandra's work with victims in Sri Lanka after the tsunami and with survivors of Hurricane Katrina.
I want to say thank you to all the organizers of this event. I'm so impressed with the media presentation that we had earlier and the politicians who came who seemed committed to the Tamil cause. Although I have an objection to one thing that they said, but they're not here, so I'll have to tell you. You have brought together all of us who have the ability to turn the tide in favor of the beleaguered Tamil people. I want to dedicate this speech to all those who have died in this senseless conflict, and to all the Tamils who are trapped in Sri Lanka and cannot be here today. We are their voices. What we're here to talk about today is horrific. Despite calls from the UN, the EU, the US Secretary of State, Mrs. Clinton, members of Parliament in Britain and Canada, and despite calls of over 80 million Tamils from all over the world, the Sri Lankan government is conducting a ruthless killing of Tamil civilians, including children in the north of that country, to expel them from their home against their will, either dead or injured. Next slide. What is even more horrendous is that the world is doing nothing or looking away. This government has the tacit approval of the government of India, the government of China, the government of Pakistan, and many world bodies. None of them have any regard for Tamil human and civil rights. They have turned a blind eye to the genocide for a port on the Indian Ocean, oil exploration in the Mannar Gulf in the northwest coast, and an oil storage facility in Trincomalee on the east coast, and the ability to influence sea trade routes in the waters of the Indian Ocean. Other countries who do nothing and are silent, they are accomplices of this destruction of an entire Tamil community. I'm an American doctor who went to the northern coast of Sri Lanka after the tsunami, and I helped in a small fishing village north of Kilinochchi in the area of the de facto government of the Tamil Tigers. I went back 6 months later alone. None of the other doctors could go, and I wanted to go back and see my village. And it was just a beautiful ceremony when I came back. They were just very loving. And as I prepared for my third trip, the government broke the ceasefire, and all hell has broken loose. Since then, the war on the Tamil civilians has increased in heartbreaking devastation. People ask me why I work so hard for the Tamil people. The genocide of the Tamil people is personal for me. After the tsunami, I worked with people whose babies were torn out of their arms, people who lost 21 members of their family, people who awoke to find themselves hanging in trees and having the rest of their families devastated in parts all over the sand. You know, when you listen and you help people go through an earth-shattering experience, you invite them into your heart, and they invite you into their hearts. That bond can never be broken. I left friends and sisters there. Saddam Hussein, the government of Sudan, the government of Burma, Pol Pot of Cambodia, Nazi Germany, and the government of Sri Lanka. They're all members of the same killing club. You know, in reaction to the Honorable Bob Ray, who left, I caught him outside. You cannot have a unilateral ceasefire. That means one side. If you ask the LTTE to lay down their arms now, just lay down your arms, no more military solution. It won't work. There's going to be a bloodbath of everybody involved, the LTTE and all the civilians. So a ceasefire is two parties. And this is really crucial as you go out and you do your own advocacy work, as you write your own letters to the UN, as you write your own letters to the government of Canada. You must stress the point that the LTTE has asked for a ceasefire, and it has been refused by the Sri Lankan government. When we look at the destruction of what the Sri Lankan government is doing, does anybody in here believe that if the LTTE puts their arms down and says, sorry, that there isn't going to be a bloodbath? So please stress this with everybody that you can. We've all been shocked and saddened and devastated, next slide, at the news that comes daily from the Vani region. This government uses, next slide, incendiary bombs, burning whole families as they sleep, leaves civilians lying on the streets bleeding to death, next slide, does forced abortions of Tamil women in government-controlled areas, tortures and rapes in the new concentration camps for the civilian Tamils who actually get to escape to Vavuniya. Next slide. This ethnic cleansing of the Tamils is spreading as a bloodstain across the Tamil land. It is masterminded by the president of Sri Lanka, Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is guilty of war crimes against the Tamil people. He was elected on his platform of the final solution of the Tamil people. The Sri Lankan government apologizes to no one. They do not say that the civilian deaths are collateral damage. They don't apologize for using cluster bombs on civilian areas. They don't apologize for using incendiary bombs on densely packed civilians. They don't apologize for threatening doctors to leave. They don't apologize for ordering the UN and all NGOs to leave. They don't apologize for closing off the whole area under attack from journalists or observers. They don't apologize for starving and killing over 300,000 Tamil civilians who have done nothing wrong except to be born Tamil in the country of Sri Lanka. The similarity to the Jews being killed in Germany is chilling. The government of Sri Lanka is acting just like the Nazi regime, with well-thought-out plans to exterminate Tamils. Once again, if the LTT puts down their arms, do you think they're going to respect a ceasefire? And just as we can't imagine that the government of Sri Lanka is evil, can get worse. President Rajapaksa ordered the shelling of civilian hospitals and then stated openly that it was justified. These cowards claim that they are waging a war against terror to hide their ethnic cleansing. Another point that I ask you to please make in your advocacy work when you write your own letters. This is ethnic cleansing. That's insane. Next slide. Just look at the people who are being killed, the casualties. They're old people, women, children. They're not killing terrorists. They're using this as an excuse to exterminate an entire population. This is genocide.